Hello everyone, Ethersong here, and this video is an overview of the new Blitz Lancer class in Blue Protocol. The Blitz Lancer is a class that wields a two-handed spear and excels at jumping into and out of combat. They are able to place marks on their enemy that can be activated for extra damage and to apply debuffs. The Blitz Lancer has three types of marks they can apply. The Burst Mark increases the damage of an attack dealt to an enemy when activated. The Void Mark decreases damage dealt by an enemy when activated. The Entangle Mark decreases an enemy's movement speed when activated. The Blitz Lancer basic attack has a number of variations depending on player input. The most basic attack is a 4-hit combo that on the last hit increases the length of debuffs on the enemy. By holding down the attack button, it is also possible to charge an attack. This can be done while performing other attack chains. Releasing the charge causes the Blitz Lancer to dash attack forward and apply a burst mark to the enemy. Holding directional buttons while attacking also affects the Blitz Lancer attack chain. Holding left or right lets the Blitz Lancer do a sweeping attack on the second hit. Holding the up direction lets the Blitz Lancer do an attack that applies the void mark to the enemy. Holding the down direction changes the Blitz Lancer attack to one that applies the entangle mark to enemies on the second hit. The Blitz Lancer class action is called Escape Leap. It allows the class to leap in the air. Holding the down direction while performing this action lets the class jump backwards. While leaping in the air, the class action button can be pressed again to do a leap shot, throwing one spear at the enemy. This also activates marks placed on the enemy. If all three types of marks are activated on the enemy at the same time, additional area of effect damage occurs. The Blitz Lancer has 12 tactical skills available to use, 4 of which can be equipped at a time. Starting off, we have the Rapid Spear skill. You perform 4 powerful jabs, followed by a powerful blow. The last attack activates marks. The next skill is Rapid Spark. It is a variation of Rapid Spear with a lightning attribute and a slightly longer cooldown. Continuing on, here is the Grand Spiral skill. You jump up in the air and then attack rapidly downwards towards an enemy. This skill activates marks. The Grand Spark is a variation of the Grand Spiral skill that also creates a lightning field that damages enemies around the point of impact. The next skill is called Upper Dance. You perform 2 small upper attacks followed by a large upper attack. The large attack activates marks. Continuing on, this skill is Stab Impact. It sends out a shockwave that pierces enemies and applies the burst mark. Next up is Thrust Bolt. You stab and send out a lightning attack. It can be charged to increase the range, damage, and elemental buildup of the attack. Cruel Thrust is a powerful skill that stabs the enemy and then follows up with an attack using the hilt of the weapon. The first attack activates marks, and the second applies the burst mark. The last damage skill is called Tornado Spin. You raise your spear above your head and perform a tornado attack. The skill can be charged to do 2 tornado attacks followed by a slicing attack. The slicing attack activates marks. The Blitz Lancer also has 3 utility type skills it can equip. The first is called Hunting Zone. While activated, if you hit an enemy with your leap shot, a damaging shockwave is created that pulls in enemies. In addition, the cooldown of your class action is removed, and kicking an enemy when leaping in the air places a void mark on them. The next utility skill is called Mark Trigger. It increases the power of your marks. And the Blitz Lancer's final skill is called Prepare Mode. Activating it creates a counter counting the number of marks you activate. After a set amount of time, or if the counter is filled, the next time you use each of your tactical skills, their damage is increased based on the number of marks activated. The Blitz Lancer's ultimate skill is called End of Javelin. You do a large sweeping attack, applying all 3 marks to each enemy hit. And then you throw your spear forward, damaging and activating marks on the enemy it hits. Overall, the Blitz Lancer is a class that seems to focus on darting into and out of combat, aiming to build up marks on enemies for burst damage and debuffs. If enemies are grouped up, performing sweeping attacks, activating all 3 marks at once, and using area of effect skills allows the Blitz Lancer to contribute to area damage. The Blitz Lancer's basic attacks also allow it to extend the duration of debuffs on the enemy. Mixing this attack in along with mark attacks seems like it could be useful for keeping party members' debuffs up on enemies longer. Overall, the Blitz Lancer is a nimble attacker that can decrease enemies' attack and movement through mark debuffs while also increasing debuff duration on enemies. It is primarily single target focused, but is also able to deal area of effect damage through some attacks and by stacking marks. Alright, so here I am with a build. I have the Stab Impact, Cruel Thrust, Grand Spark, and then the Hunting Zone. So just as a refresher, the Stab Impact has this AoE burst mark. The Cruel Thrust is a pretty high damaging skill that also reapplies the burst mark. And then the Grand Spark here is an air attack that can trigger the marks on multiple foes it hits, which is nice. So some AoE mark trigger. And it also just has some pretty good damage, as long as with utility, being able to jump in the air and dodge attacks and whatnot. And then finally I have the Hunting Zone here, which lets me jump for the AoE damage, constantly spam the class action. And when I'm near foes, I can also kick them while jumping up in the air to put on the Void mark, which is nice. And the Void mark usually is one that takes a while to put on. You need to do a 4 hit combo to be able to put it on. So it's nice to be able to put that on pretty easily. And also just being able to dodge when you want to. It's nice, and being able to trigger when you want to as well is nice. So all nice things along with the Hunting Zone. I think it's pretty powerful utility. As for some general gameplay, I think what you would normally want to be doing here is, while doing attack chains, you want to hold down the attack button to charge up your charge attack, and so also put on the burst marks. So for example, we're going to do a forward attack chain here, and I'll be holding down the button. Right at the end, I can cancel it, and then do another backwards chain. Put all 3 marks on the enemy pretty quickly. And then I can finish it off with the throwing the spear in the air to trigger all of them and do the burst damage. And when the foes are grouped up, I can use my AoE there and then jump in to trigger them all. I think what I noticed with the burst mark here, it's the one you can get with this or some of the skills, looks to be around a 5% increase in damage to the skill that activates it. I'm not totally sure yet. I would have to do more testing or see what other people have found out online, but that seems to be what it does. The other ones cause debuffs. So the Void one causes enemies to lose some attack. And then the Entangle mark causes them to move slower. So those are just some defensive debuffs. Otherwise, that's the general feeling of the class. Yeah, so just some other things. I noticed also when you're using the class action here, if you throw the spear, then you can cancel into a charged thrust in the air. If you don't throw the spear, you need to wait until you land on the ground to do that attack. See if I can do it here. Yeah, so it doesn't seem like you're able to do it unless you cancel the falling animation with the spear throw. So otherwise, yeah, it just doesn't seem to activate. So yeah, you just go in the air, throw the spear, and then you can charge in. And that's nice for traversing the map as well. But in any case, those are just some general look at the build I have here and just some tips for playing the class. Now I'm going to jump into a mission and see what it's like. Alright, and here I am in a rush battle. So, let's try out the build that we had there. We can see people already in the maid outfits, so I guess some people have been doing the gacha. I've seen some people doing the heart gesture, like emotes as well, so that's pretty impressive. I guess they did the gacha 30 times. I haven't done that at all. I might use some of my free tickets, but that's about it. Anyways, let's get started and see how it goes. I don't know what the best way to use the class yet. I'm still kind of testing things out. I want to see how this works somewhat. Like it gives me some AoE. Otherwise, yeah, I should just be focusing on putting on marks. Get the burst damage there. Put it on multiple enemies, and do the AoE. I also got my just battle imagines as well to do AoE damage. And I also can trigger my allies' marks as well if they have marks they're putting on enemies. Another thing is holding that charge attack can also be used just for movement as well. Put the mark on multiple foes there. But almost dead, so looks like we're doing alright. Try to clear out these. But definitely feels like a class you need some practice with to get a handle on the rhythm of putting all the marks on things. Dodge attacks by jumping in the air like that. Nice. I think that was the last one. And that's it. So we cleared out the enemies there. Overall, it seems like a fun class. Like I said, looks like it's gonna take some time to practice. Need to get a hang of just the rhythm of it and just using your skills for utility or applying the marks or removing the marks and all things like that. So lots of things to think about while playing the class. But let's leave here and I'll do just kind of like overall impressions of the class as well. Alright, so we're back to this area with the training dummies. So let me give my overall impressions of the class. So I think it is a fun class and a good addition to the game. I like how it has a lot of movement built into the class. You're able to dash around. You can jump into the air with your spear. You can throw that. If you charge up your spear, you can even move forward in the air with that, which is pretty cool. Depending on which direction you're holding when you jump into the air, you also can like jump backwards. Some of your attacks also have movement built into them, where you kind of jump back with that as well. So I like all the kind of movement and just action elements they put into the class. As for some negatives, this goes into some more core elements of the game and not just the Blitz Lancer. So it's not really a problem with the Blitz Lancer, but just some of the elements of the game. But as we can see here, we have some duplicate skills, right? And the class only has 12 skills to start out with. And some of these skills by themselves are pretty bland. And I don't have a problem with having, you know, bland skills in game. You need to have like bread and butter to, like, hit something harder or something like that in games. For example, this is the rapid spear skill, which is pretty simple. You just do a lot of spear attacks for a little bit more damage. But when you only have a limited number of skills to start, you start feeling that impact, because we have like 2 duplicates here and only 12 skills, so it feels like you're already down to like 10 skills. And there's not really much of a difference between these. I guess you can put both of them on your skill bar. And same with this jump attack here. Being able to put both of them on a skill bar, I mean, it's not too bad. And as a skill itself, I like this jump attack better because it has a utility mixed in with it. But even so, it feels pretty limited, especially when you're able to only have 12 skills to pick from, and you only can put 4 on your skill bar to start with. And beyond that, a lot of the skills just feel like different ways of doing the same thing. So you can deal damage with this skill. You can deal damage with this skill with the lightning it put on it. But you have other ones like attack with like sweeping upper 2 times and then hit him again, or hit him with the spear and then put another thing on him. So just different ways of dealing more damage. But if you're going to be dealing damage, I mean, you could just be auto-attacking. So I guess what I would like to see is the skills perhaps embracing things you couldn't do with the normal auto attacks a little bit more. So perhaps more utility things built into the skills. One thing in particular is I would like to see a lot more movement. Being an action game, we have some with this class, being able to jump in the air or charge up the spear to, dash forward. But perhaps you could have, for example, like a skill that has 3 charges on it or something. And with each charge, you could dash a decent distance, for example, like from here to here to an enemy. And you could go to another enemy or something, so you could zip between multiple enemies. Just doing something like that would feel a lot of fun. So I feel like a lot of these skills are missing that fun factor, which I want to see them add more to the game. And I guess beyond that, let me try to equip another skill here. You have like the other ones, like the lightning charge. So like the thrust bolt. I think this is a good example of another duplicate skill, because it's also pretty similar, I guess, in a way to, what was this called? The stab impact. This was like the shockwave. This is like a lightning charge, discharge. So these are a little bit different, and I like that. And I also like how this electric attack here has the charge element to it. So you can charge up this big electrical, like spear attack. You're charging it up and you let out this spear attack, and it's pretty cool. But after all that charging, it's just basically, deal damage. And it has these... This is another problem with the elemental system in the game, but you have these skills with the elemental things built into it, which helps build up these elemental gauges. But you only can have one element applied to an enemy at a time. For example, I have the ice applied to an enemy since I have an ice weapon equipped. So even though I'm using like these electrical attacks, the electrical effect really isn't being applied to the enemy, since I'm going to be doing most of my damage with this ice spear anyways. So in functionality, all it really does is help build up the elemental build-up faster. Personally, I feel like the elemental system could also be looked at being reworked to have perhaps, being able to apply multiple elements at the same time. Because then I think that could add some more build variety and ways to think about doing things to the game. Basically in a conditioned sort of way. I don't know if people have played like Guild Wars 2 or anything like that, but you could have, like multiple like burning or poison or like things like that applied to enemies. Beyond that, the utility skills here, once again, these are very long recharge, and some of them feel very lackluster. For example, this prepare mode, you need to, activate 3 of your marks on enemies to give you a burst of, extra damage on the next time you use each of your damaging skills. But this is a 65-second recharge. And what it does is basically it doubles damage next time you use each of your skills, but double damage on each of your skills every 65 seconds doesn't feel the best. If that was like a 20-second recharge, so something you could like play around, trying to get that effect up multiple times and keep doing that extra damage, I think that would feel a lot better. But once again, you're limited to these skill slots, so you only can have 4 anyways, so maybe you take 1 utility at max on a class like this. And in that case, you're probably going to be taking the best utility. The hunting zone seemed pretty good to me. I don't know, I'm still up in the air about this mark trigger. It says it increases the effects of your marks. From what I saw, the burst mark you can put on foes, this one, it looks like it adds 5% extra damage to your next attack. I would have to do more testing, but that's what it looks like. So, and with that, was it the mark trigger on it? I was thinking maybe it does 10% extra damage instead of the 5%. But once again, I would need to do more testing, and I don't know how it affects the other marks, the void mark or the entangle mark. Perhaps it increases the level of those marks. So once again, it could be pretty useful, but you're pretty limited to what you can be equipping here. But once again, this is kind of going a little off track and going into more some of the core elements of the game. As a class itself in the game as it currently stands, I think the Blitz Lancer is a fun addition, and I think it's going to be a very fun class to play. I'll keep trying to level it up, and maybe I'll look at doing some streams with something I like testing and just like playing around with the class. But there are some core elements with Blue Protocol in particular that I would like to see kind of worked on, just trying to make the combat a little bit more interesting and engaging, and just increasing that fun factor, which I think is a thing I think they still can do. So hopefully they can work on that, and it looks like they have that in their radar. So I'll be continuing to follow the game and, you know, play it on and off here. But as always, I'm gonna kind of end the current video here. Let me know what you think of it in the comments, and I hope to see you next time. Later.